Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to introduce a more intermediate topic with lists called a slice or slicing. It's basically a tool that's built in that allows us to make copies of entire lists, but more commonly just portions of a list, individual slices. So we could say, give me the part of this list from index 2 to 10, or give me the part of the list from index 5 all the way till the end. And the syntax for slicing is a bit different than what we've seen so far. It's not a method that we call on a list with a dot and then the name of a method like dot append and parentheses. We actually use the square brackets that we use to access an individual item out. Sum list bracket 0 gives us an individual element at the first index. But for a slice, we use the same brackets, but there are 3 pieces of information we can provide. And we don't have to have all of them, but we'll see some examples. And the first example is where we want the slice to begin, where we should start cutting, make our first cut into the list. The second is where to stop. And then the third is the step or the interval. Are we including every index? Are we, skipping every other one? Just like with range. If you watch the range video where we created a start, stop, and a step, we could do odd numbers from 1 to 20. The biggest difference is that we're using colons to separate them and square brackets. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the first parameter, which is the start point, the index where we should start slicing. So here's an example. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 stored in a list as first list. And the first thing I'll point out is that we have to add this colon afterwards, because if I just did first list of 1, it's going to give me the item at index 1. Which is 2. So in order to tell Python we're slicing, we have to include at least 1 colon. So even if we're only using the start and we're not including end and step, you need to at least have a colon. And the same goes later once we learn we don't have to include a start and we can just do an end. We have to include a colon before. Okay, so here's our first example. If we slice from index of 1 to the end, we get 2, 3, and 4. So it starts right here. So 0, 1 starts at 2, and it slices to the end. And here's another example. We start at index 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, which is 4, the item 4. And we go to the end, which there's nothing afterwards, so we end up with a list of just 4. If we tried to slice from index 20, so 20 colon, we would get an empty list. Python would look for it. It doesn't find anything at that index, but it still gives us a list. What's cool about slicing is that we can also slice from the end using a negative number. So if we slice from -1, we just get the last element in a list. Or in this example, we slice from -3 to the end. So that's going to be -1, -2, -3, forward. So 2, 3, 4. So if we pass a negative number, you get back a new list with that many number of elements from the end, if that makes sense. And as a quick aside, we could also just pass in a colon, and that will give us the entire list. It's the same as passing in 0 colon. Let's go to my terminal, and I'll make a list of colors. Okay, so we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, Roy G. Biv. And if we want to do a slice, let's do something from yellow to the end. So that's index of 0, 1, 2. And if we just do index of 2, of course, it gives us yellow. But if we add that colon in, it goes to the end. Yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So the note that I added at the end there is that if we do 0 colon, that will just make a copy of the list. And it's actually important to notice or to know that this is a copy of the list. It's not giving us the same list. And we could prove that. So if we have colors, and then I make colors 2 equal to colors 0 colon, which we could actually just do colon as well. That's the shortcut. So I'll show you that now. And I look at colors 2. It looks the same as colors. And remember the way we could test, we can do colors equals colors 2, and that's going to tell us if the values are the same, and they are. But if we do colors is colors 2, that's going to tell us if they actually reference the same thing in memory, and they don't. We've made a unique copy, and it has its own address in memory, so when we use is, it comes back as false. Okay, the last thing I'll show, negative numbers. If we go back to colors and we slice from negative, let's do -2 colon. What do you expect to get if this is colors? I'll hit enter, and we get indigo and violet. So it goes from the -2 index, so that's going to be -1, -2, and it slices to the end. So indigo and violet. Let's now examine the second parameter of slice, which is the end point, the end index. So the first parameter is where to start, what index to begin the first cut, and the second parameter is where to end it. And it's important to note it is exclusive, so it does not include the last index that we provide. It's just like ranges in that way, but it's not like rand_int. Very confusing in my opinion. So here's an example. Same first list, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we slice with :2, so we don't even provide a start point, it's going to assume to begin at the beginning, the 0 index, and it slices until index of 2, but it doesn't include index of 2 because index of 2 is 0, 1, 2. That gives us 3. So it slices up until here, giving us 1, 2. Same thing here. If we slice with :4, starts at the beginning and goes to index 4, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, and index 4 doesn't exist. It's after the list ends, so it gives us everything in the list. And then here's our first example of passing in a start and an end. In this case, we're slicing from index of 1 to index 3. So index of 1 is included. So 0, 1, so it includes 2, and it goes up to 3, and then this is index of 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. So it includes indexes 1 and 2, giving us 2 and 3. It's so many numbers to talk about. It's easier with colors, but treat this as a reference. And if we pass in a negative number as the end value into our slice, it will end the slice at that many elements from the end of the list. So if we wanted the first 2 elements in the list, we could slice from the beginning until 3 from the end, and we could pass in -2 as a second option. So here's an example. In this case, if we do :-1, it's going to go from the beginning, which is index 0, up until the last item, -1, which is 4, and it doesn't include it, so it gives us 1, 2, 3. Or this example goes from index of 1 up to index -1, non-inclusive, so that gives us index of 1, 0, 1, so we get 2, 3, and we stop because this is -1 here, and it's exclusive. So let's go back to colors, and this time, let me make a bit more space. If we look at colors, let's do a slice from red up to blue, including blue. So basically leaving out indigo and violet. And to do that, we'll do colors, and we could do 0 colon to make it clear we're starting at the beginning, or just do colon, and then the index of indigo. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like this. And that gives us red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Doesn't include indigo. And if I just wanted to slice from yellow to green, well, what we would do is start off with the first index, so that's going to be 0, 1, 2, and it includes 2, so 2, and we want it to stop. I think I said yellow and green, so we want it to stop at blue because it doesn't include blue, so that's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we look at this, we get yellow and green. Finally, let's move on to the third parameter, which is the step. So it's basically the number to count at a time, the interval, how many to skip. It works the same way as the step works in ranges, where we could generate even or odd numbers or multiples of 5, that sort of thing. So for example, if we had a step of 2, it counts every other number, 1, 3, 5, and so on. So here's an example. We have our first list, but this time it includes 1 up to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And notice that we have 2 colons in a row. So this signifies we have a start, there's no end, and then we have our third parameter. So if you see this, 2 colons, it means there's no middle, there's no end parameter. So our start is from index of 1, so that's going to be 0, 1, and we're going to the end, but we're counting by 2s. So we get index of 2, index of 1, index of 3, and then index of 5, giving us 2, 4, 6. So this example, I'm actually just looking at it and it's wrong. I'll have to update the slide because if we have first list : 2, this means start at the beginning and go to the end. I believe the reason, I think I was using the old version of first list, which only went up to 4, but this one goes up to 6. But if we're counting by 2s for the entire list, so start at the beginning, go to the end, count by 2s, it should give us index of 0, index of 2, and then index of 4. So it should be 1, 3, 5, not 1, 3. So I'll update that. Okay, it's updated now. Steps are useful for getting a certain pattern in a slice, but things get really interesting when we add negative step values. So for example, let's take a look at this first one. So we have our first list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going from the beginning, or from index of 1, so that's 2, and we're going to the end. However, we're stepping back. So we go 2 down to 1 to the end. So we reverse the direction. Rather than going forward, we're going backwards. So we end up with 2, 1 in a list. Here's another example. It works a little different because we're not passing in a start point. We're passing in an end. So our end is index of 1, which is 2. But remember that end is exclusive, so it wouldn't include 2. But because we have -1, we're actually going from the end of the array, so 6, 5, 4, 3, and then we stop because we hit this index. So the result is 6, 5, 4, 3. And then finally, in this last example, we're stepping backwards, and we're starting at index 2, so that's going to be 0, 1, 2 here, and there's no endpoint, so we're moving backwards from 3 down to 2 to 1 with that -1. Slices are definitely a bit tricky to wrap your head around, especially when you add the negative numbers, but keep practicing. Also, it's not a deal breaker for Python. You'll see them used a lot, but if you have questions about them, you can pretty easily get them answered or figure it out with just kind of sitting down and thinking through it. So now that we've practiced with slices, let's see some cool things we can do. So we saw from earlier that going from the beginning to the end, stepping back by 1 will reverse a list, or a string, by the way. So instead of using the reverse method, we could simply do it this way. So here's an example with a string. So I mentioned at the beginning that all of this works with strings. So we could do 0, 0, -1, or just : -1, and it just reverses the entire string. Another thing we can do is modify specific portions of a list. So here's an example. We have numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a list, and we can actually set a slice. So we have numbers 1 to 3, so that's going to be index 0, 1. So from 2 up to here, 0, 1, 2, 3. So these two, we're actually going to update it to be A, B, C. So it adds that data here, and we end up with 1, A, B, C, 4, 5. All right. So lastly, for just 2 or 3 seconds, well, that's a lie, for like 20 seconds, let's just do colors, and let's do one of those tricks using, well, let's use steps first of all. So let's do : 2. What do we expect from that? Well, it starts at the beginning, red, and it skips, and it goes to yellow, to blue, to violet. And let's play around with the -1, which will reverse it. It's another way of reversing the list. And finally, let me show you something a bit different. Let's do colors 0, which is going to give us red. Actually, let's do a longer color. Let's do colors 5, which is indigo. That's a string, and I actually can chain this on. This is a bit of a bonus. And what does this do again? To a list or a string, it will reverse it. So if I chain them together, it accesses indigo first and then slices it by reversing it using -1 as a step, and we get agidni. So just a quick little bonus thing there. We can do the exact same thing to strings. So if I did hello like this, and then I access the 0 character, we get H. But if I do :4, I get, oops, unintentional there. Please don't get mad at me, please. And we could do the same thing that we've seen. Let's do : 3. And that goes from H, and then it skips this, and it goes to that L, skips 2, goes to that L, skips 2, and gives us the last O. Okay, that's enough. This video has been so long. I'm sorry, but there's a lot to cover with slices. So we're going to get some practice. If you're feeling lost, hang in there.